So welcome. Hello.
Okay.
I hope the sun's shining where you are. It's not shining here. I don't know. It hasn't shone in about a month. It's kind of a drag, but I'm sure the summer will get better in Scotland. So I'm Neil, and I work with Sandra, Jane, Gail, and Iona. I don't know why I had to look down at my notes there. I do know who I work with. And Iona's doing the Zoom mastering tonight, and she's very good at that. And we thank her very much for doing that. Thanks a lot, Iona. And so tonight, of course, this evening, we have Janet Lees reading from her new book, Come Wind, Come Weather. And we'll also hear from Bob, her husband. Hi, Bob. And Hannah, I think. Her daughter's Hannah here. Hi, Hannah. Yep. It's nice to see you. You're all very welcome. And we'll also hear from the Iona Community Young Adults Group, YAG, from Jack, Grace, and Elizabeth. I hope they're there too, somewhere. And they'll be reflecting on their recent pilgrimage along St. Cuthbert's Way. So welcome to them. So that sounds like a pretty full program, doesn't it? Sounds pretty good. Janet is a member of the lay community of St. Benedict and a former school chaplain. She's also written several books and downloads. And of course, the new book is Come Wind, Come Weather. And I'll read a bit from the blurb on the back. In Come Wind, Come Weather, Janet Lees shares her inspiring journey walking the length of Britain at the age of 60. This book is more than a travelogue. It's a practical guide to transforming your own walks, physical or metaphorical, into journeys of self-discovery and connection with the world around you. The book offers practical tips and inspiration for planning and undertaking your own pilgrimage, profound reflections on faith, nature, and the climate crisis gleaned from Janet's 1,000-mile trek across Britain, unique resources tailored to different ecological habitats from mountains to the sea, and a powerful call to action to protect the planet. So, Janet, I think what I'll do is hand things over to you and Bob and Hannah. And is that okay?
Of course, Neil. Thank you. And thanks so much for all your work on this book, which has been magnificent, along with everybody else from Wild Goose. Well, I'm pleased to say hello to you all. I recognised a few faces. There were people there from the lay community of St. Benedict, of all things, and other friends and family members. Thanks very much for coming on, all of you guys. We are Team Lees Warwicker. There are three of us. And we have walked the end-to-end 3 times. Now, when I say that, I should perhaps clear that up. The first person in the family to walk the end-to-end was Bob Warwicker, and he walked it in 2003. And he wrote a little book then, which he called End-to-End Via the Margins. And he was working at the time for the workplace chaplaincy in South Yorkshire as a chaplain. And since then, Bob's been up and down the end-to-end twice more, haven't you?
Not walking all the way, just driving around and helping and what have you.
Supporter. We have this role called supporter because actually, probably if you're doing a long distance walk of that kind, that's a good idea. So the second person to walk the end-to-end in our family was our daughter, Hannah Warwicker, who was 18 at the time. She was 9 when Bob walked his end-to-end. We didn't know it at the time, but she said she wanted to herself that she wanted to walk it herself one day. And she did then, in fact, walk it in 2012. And we're going to hear from her soon. And then that meant that I was the only person who hadn't walked the end-to-end. And I thoroughly recommend it, by the way, should you decide to try it. And I therefore thought when I retired, from my role as a school chaplain, that's the first thing I should do. And so I did. And we set off on the 2nd of April, 2019, and it took me just over 4 months. So the book came out eventually because, of course, there was COVID and all those other things we had to work around. So if you've got the book, then you might already know that it's the first part is sort of about general things for getting started on walking type pilgrimages, and how to get underway. If you go down to Land's End or John O'Groats, you'll see there's a line drawn on the road, which is the start line, you see. Okay, good thinking. You need to know where to start, eh? So here we are. This is from the start line. Today I travel in the power and presence of the Holy Three, Creator around me, Christ to accompany me, Spirit to animate me. In the power and presence of the Holy Three, I travel today. Well, the book's full of sort of little snippets, some of which are sort of the more general kinds of things that come along any day that you're walking, and could come along any day you were walking. For example, we are very good at looking for a thing of the day. Now, usually with us, this is a tree of the day. Bob, you started this, in fact, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. He's a man of few words.
Well.
So yes, a tree of the day is a wonderful tree. Any tree, could be a big tree, could be a little tree, could be any sort of tree you like, could be on its own, in a group, anything. A tree of the day. And if there's one thing we need to reverence today, it's the tree of the day. Try to get to know your tree of the day. Give it a hug, give it a stroke, and take a photo of it, and you know, generally celebrate your tree of the day, because there is something that trees do for us for nothing that we cannot do for ourselves. And if you can work that out, there is not a prize at the end, I'm afraid. On the other hand, another thing you'll need to think about is food. It's unlikely you will get from the beginning at Land's End to the end at John O'Groats, or the other way around, should you like walking downhill, and without food. Food for pilgrims is really, 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 really important. And one of the things that's really a wonderful, generous thing to find on any route like this are honesty boxes. People put food out for you to enjoy, providing you're honest enough to pay for it along the way. And you get cake sheds, and you get wheelbarrows full of jam, and you get so many different things, you can't believe it. And the best one was definitely the honesty freezer on the Shropshire Union Canal, which was full of ice cream. And that was the day that I ate 5 ice creams in one day. Now, this day has passed into a bit of a legend, and the teenage young man who lives next door was very impressed by this particular part of the journey. But as I pointed out to him, the thing about ice cream, and you need to all remember this, is that it melts. When you put it in your mouth and it goes down to your tummy, it's actually melted already. So it doesn't fill you up, is the point I'm trying to make. And if you're not sure about that, you might like to try it for yourself one day. Okay, that's ice cream. We've dealt with that now. It might be time for us to pull in Hannah and ask her if she'd say something about her end to end. Hannah, where are you?
Hello, I'm here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's so exciting to get a chance to celebrate the Team Lees Warwick habit of walking from one end of the country to the other. So I did my end-to-end, as my mum said, when I was 18. So I did it as a gap summer between school and university. And so I suppose I did that for a lot of the same reasons as some of my peers were taking gap years, right? So there's a sense of sort of, you know, rite of passage transition from school to university to being a young adult that was really important to me to celebrate that with something I was only going to do once in my life, perhaps. But also I really wanted it to be a celebration of the British Isles. I did not want to be, you know, I couldn't have afforded to jet around the world, but I wouldn't have wanted to. I wanted it to be about the British landscape I'd grown up in. I wanted it to be largely about the north of Britain as well. You're going to notice that quite a lot of the extracts and thoughts we've chosen to share today are ones that reference Northern England or Scotland. So I really wanted to celebrate that stomping ground. And I suppose that's why I did it, as much as because it seemed to be becoming a family habit. I'm going to ask the author now whether she was hoping I would immediately segue into reading about the West Highland Way, or whether she was hoping I would pass back to her in between.
No, I was hoping for the segueing thing, because the Highland Way was a really big, important part of the journey for all three of us, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And
you'd say
it's a
something
place we'd taken family holidays outside of doing this as well, wasn't it? You know, and I actually have been there as a young adult again in my own right and things like that. So yeah, the West Highland Way is definitely the place to start if you like the sound of this pilgrimage thing, but you're not sure about doing 2 or 3 or 4 months of it at once. I have to say, highly recommend. So the bit of the book that I've chosen to read today is about the Devil's Staircase. And the Devil's Staircase is a really steep ascent from just outside the King's House Hotel on the edge of Rannoch Moor up over the hills and in the kind of ultimate direction of Fort William, right? And it's got quite a legendary reputation for reasons that honestly I've never understood. It's just a big hill. And one of my particular memories of my end-to-end was me and my dad and 2 family friends of ours absolutely racing up this climb and being really a bit daft about it and all being exhausted by the top and eating quite a lot of chips that afternoon and, you know, it all being a bit daft. My mum's got a different memory I don't have of everyone when she was walking asking her questions about the Devil's Staircase. They'd heard of this kind of legendary climb and she kept referring them to me because I'd already done it and, you know, thought that it was quite good fun. So here we have the Devil's Staircase. Folk do wonder about this section of the West Highland Way, and I've been asked about it by other walkers. I wonder why there are so many satanic landmarks in Britain. The Devil's Beef Tub in the southern uplands, the Devil's Elbow in Derbyshire, and on the West Highland Way, the Devil's Staircase. The path from the valley near Outnafeed on the Glencoe side curves steeply upwards, and as I was walking, I could see my ant-like companions zigzagging backwards and forwards higher up the climb. It's the sort of walk where you get to recognise each other, passing individuals and groups on the ascent as you rest and walk, walk and rest, all the way up. But as far as I know, I didn't meet the devil. I can imagine that travellers from earlier times may have been very wary of climbs like this, particularly in bad weather, hence the name. Rather than a devil's staircase, it had me in mind of Jacob's dream of a ladder stretching between earth and heaven, with angels going up and down. As ants collaborate to make life easier, so walkers need to work in harmony to ascend the heights or travel over rough ground. From the top of a mountain, you are shown the world. As we admire the view, may we be as sure-footed in our pursuit of the route to your kingdom, mountain walker.
Thank you, Hannah. That's really good. We had lots of other possible bits. There was the place where we ate the cake at Ewick. That was also on the West Highland Way. And also a little cave on the Great Glenway, which comes after the West Highland Way and goes between Fort William and Inverness. In the end, Hannah chose that one, which I love. The thing is about both the West Highland Way and the Great Glenway, some people think, I don't know why they think this, that they are not pilgrim routes. And this lies at the very heart of the whole book. Anywhere, any route is a pilgrim route if that's the intention that you have in you when you undertake it. Okay? It doesn't have to have a super holy name. It doesn't have to be renowned for people who hung about in the Middle Ages. It can be any route. All right, we're not necessarily after some weird bunch of relics at the end, or well, the relics might be the very people doing the walk, of course. But you know what I mean. It really can be any walk, and it's about our own thoughts about why we're doing it, the landscape we're walking through, and so on. And I particularly became very aware of this on the walk because the whole climate crisis issue was gaining momentum. And it's really, really important we think of this today, people, because people are now being arrested and imprisoned for making non-violent protest in favour of the climate and the planet. This is nonsense, okay? So non-violently, please walk somewhere. And it's about looking at these habitats, how they're being threatened, how they're being changed, what it is about our planet that we're not taking care of, and how we can tread gently on the earth. and that's a proverb from West Africa, and really sort of encompasses the whole thing. Which of course is the other side of that is the weather, which is why it's called come wind, come weather. You get that. You can't really walk for over 100 days in Britain and not expect to get rained on. No, absolutely. So we got rained on quite a few times, though not absolutely every day, did we, Bob? You're going to tell us about a little bit where we didn't especially get rained on, and it's here, and it's about bridges, and it's on a different route, which I might need to just tell them about.
Yes, the Three Lochs Way. Yes, well, we'll tell it. We'll read it. Yeah.
Right, the Three Lochs Way. It's in Argyll.
Bridges are important places of reflection for pilgrims. Crossing over from one place to another, they often mark progress on a route or a transition from one landscape to another, and may also help a walker to avoid a much longer route. Each bridge is an amazing feat of amazing feat of engineering in its own unique way. The Three Lochs Way in Argyll was part of my end-to-end in 2019. Not a route we had used before, it was quite strenuous in places. The Dave Markland Bridge there is named in memory of a warrant officer who managed the development of the Gurkha Bateau in Argyll, which was built by Gurkha engineers and which was opened as part of a route for long-distance walkers in 2010. Dave Markland was sadly killed in action in Afghanistan in 2010. We ate our lunch by this bridge. Crossing over a few planks, walking on an even path, sharing sandwiches in the wild. For what we are about to receive, may we be truly thankful and mindful of those who made it possible.
So we had various routes that came in and out of the overall route. There's no set route for the end-to-end. You kind of make your own route up. You add it together as you like. There's a little banner here showing you something of the route. I'm not sure if you can see that. Oh, you probably can. There we are. So there's Britain, and there's a line going up it, which was the route I chose. It overlapped to some extent with the routes taken by Bob and Hannah. But it also had different bits, like the Three Lochs Way, which we just mentioned. And along the way, well, many inspiring things happened. And later on, I was reflecting on those. It's really important when you do this kind of activity to build in some time and opportunity and reflection and creativity if you can. And here's one of them. I'll just ask Bob to hop out of the way. Here it is. This is a quilt which represents Gloucester Cathedral, which was one of the cathedrals we visited, and on the Severn Way. And this kind of patchwork, where you have these strips of fabric like this joined together, is directly related to what's called Seminole, which is a tradition from Native Americans. So that's Seminole of the Gloucester Cathedral. Of course, the thing about Gloucester was it rained, but then you knew that already, didn't you? And you saw plenty of other evidence of that rain and stuff as you were going along. I was now going to read a bit for my dad. Now, have we managed to find him? Has he got in the waiting room? Has he sneaked in under the radar? Has he...
I don't believe so, unless he's under a different
James
name.
Douglas.
We don't have a Douglas at the moment.
Oh dear. Well, I just want to tell you about him. He's 93 on Saturday. He wasn't ever born into this techno what's it world, so you know it's amazing he gets on these things at all, and he may just have not managed to. We are going to hopefully see him tomorrow, but he did come with us both at the beginning of Hannah's bit of the end-to-end in 2012 and mine in 2019, and there's a bit in the book about him. So I was going to read you that because Dad's history of getting about goes as far back as when he was an evacuee at the beginning of World War II. And this is on page 107 in case you're trying to keep up with me. Not in your pew Bibles. That's the wrong one. Just 107 in this book. Okay. Of course, a pilgrimage may also be made by rail. My father first went to Cornwall in 1939 as an evacuee, taking a train with his younger brother from Tottenham in North London to the village of Troon near Camborne. He and his brother were cared for by a kind family, whom we visited many times in my childhood and with whom we remain in contact. My father's return pilgrimage to Cornwall was, in 2019, was, like his original journey as a 9-year-old boy, by rail. It wasn't without incident. He landed up having to detrain at Dawlish Warren due to a high tide. But he did finally make it to St. Earth, and I wrote this. As the signals stop and go, and the trains arrive and depart, when you come to the end of the track, may the lifelong friends you have made always welcome you back. So thanks, Dad, for coming on the End to End. Sorry we've missed you tonight. Now, we probably ought to be pressing on, Neil, because, you know, people will want to reflect on St. Cuthbert's Way and other things. So I'll just find a little end of day blessing here. Okay. I'm a member of the lay community of St. Benedict, and we live according to the rule of St. Benedict in whatever way is possible. And one of the things that Benedictines do is they always have a good go at night prayer, because after that they have to keep the great silence right through until the next day. So it's really important to pray a bit before you do that. Benedict himself is known as one who had a good death, and Benedictines certainly believe that the best way you can die is in the night. They have a cheerful lot, Benedictines. You should definitely meet some. Anyway, you should definitely commend the day to God at the close of the day. And so here's a little something for that, just in case you've got to pop off and make the cocoa. The birds fly home to nest. The bats leave their roost to make the most of the night. For dark and light are both alike to the Creator. Each creature has a place in the cosmos and in God's heart. To each, then, God grant a quiet night. So then, Neil, what about those young people who went on St. Cuthbert's Way, eh? Let's hear about that.
Okay, thank you, Janet, Bob, Hannah. So you might, out there, you might already have Janet's book, Come Wind, Come Weather, A Pilgrim's Handbook of Prayers and Activities for the Length of Britain. You might already have it, but if you don't, here's your chance to get a free copy of this book.
No, let's see.
Yeah. Janet's written 2 other books on Wild Goose Publications and a number of downloads. If you give me just the name of one of her books, or even a download, and you send that correct title to me at Neil, N-E-I-L, at ionabooks.com. You send the title out. The first person who gets a right answer, I'll send them a free book, Janet's book. And I probably won't check until like the beginning of next week. So that'll keep you in anticipation through the whole weekend. Like you'll be thinking you're going to win the lottery or something. So it's Neil, N-E-I-L, at ionabooks.com. Isn't that easy? Free book. And if you already have the book, you can give it to a friend. Janet, I must ask again, where are you in the landscape in this photo here? I can't remember.
A very important thing to remember. Yeah, you see those blue trousers, Neil? Do you see the blue trousers on the front cover? Those blue trousers have been up and down the country a lot. I call them my blue trousers because I don't like wearing rain trousers, so I wear those instead. That actual photograph is taken on what we call the top road. That is to say, the road that goes along the top of Caithness near the coast, via Doonray and those other places along there. Thurso, that's just before Thurso, that bit. We went that way because I wanted to go via Forcinard, which is an RSPB reserve on the flow country, which is very, very important for peat blanket bog. So I wanted to go via that, whereas Hannah and Bob had gone up the A9 round the other way, you see, on the northeast coast rather than the north coast. But actually, could have been plenty of photos like that in the whole book. I think another was at Keswick Beach when I got completely drenched, and it's really come wind, come weather. Yeah, absolutely. To be a pilgrim in Britain, that's what it's like.
There are some other nice photos in the book, and Sandra, who did the layouts, done a great job
She has.
of making it look really attractive.
There's a cauliflower from Cornwall.
There's a what?
A cauliflower from Cornwall.
Yeah, it's really that is spectacular. Yeah,
A
it's really
spectacular
nice.
cauliflower. That's it. And as you say, lots of others.
Yeah. Have you ever you've walked the St. Cuthbert's Way, I imagine?
Yep. Here it is. In 2014, we walked the St. Cuthbert's Way, Bob and I. And we did what we call now a relay method, whereby one person takes over from the next person, takes over from the next. You know, we didn't walk the whole thing together all the time. We did, you know, one person would do a bit, then the next person would come along and take up the baton, as it were, there, and then walk on until that other person came back again and did another bit. That way we could do it a bit quicker because we were on a restricted time program for that. But also I could leave all the uphill bits to Bob, which is always sensible.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, why don't we hear from the Iona Community Young Adults group now, from Jack Woodruff, Grace McDonough, and Elizabeth Bowell, and they'll reflect on their recent pilgrimage on the St. Cuthbert's Way. I don't know who wants to go first. I think, Jack, you said you wanted to talk about what you learned on the way, folk you met on the way, you know, why you went on the pilgrimage, and sort of what surprised you.
Yeah, I'll talk for a bit and then I'll hand over to Elizabeth. Sure. So I was part of the group that organized the whole thing, and about 10 of us from the young adults group went from Melrose in the Scottish borders to Lindisfarne along St. Cuthbert's Way, and we were staying in church buildings, so kind of indoor camping, if you will, and a night in the hostel and 2 nights staying in one in the house of a community member, Iona community member, and then one with the vicar on Lindisfarne. And part of that is kind of myself and Annie, who organized it, have done pilgrimages like that before, but it also meant that we were meeting the local community. And when we were staying in the churches, we invited members of the congregation to come talk to us, which was really great. I mean, after a long day of walking, it is quite hard to then sit there and have sort of vaguely intelligent conversations about, you know, pressures of farming and relationships to the land. But it was all, you know, that's part of it, and it was really interesting. And kind of touching on some of what Janet was saying about intentionality, along the way we met people who were doing it as well, but they were doing it as a long distance walk. And what we learned from the churches was that they get a lot of people who do the walk, do the way, but they don't really engage with the kind of spiritual side of it. And it's kind of, I mean, its origins as a route was as a long distance walk, but the churches along the way are kind of working to like add more of a pilgrimage element to it. And they've got kind of a churches together group, which is great. So why did we decide to do the pilgrimage? Kind of three main things. One was building community, which is you know, part of the whole Iona community thing happening on Iona, building community there. And then the other was just to spend time outside and kind of the different things you learn there, different creatures you encounter. We saw an adder on one of the days, which was slightly scary, seeing like a little snake enjoying the sun, but you know, it's all part of our country. And and then the last one was engaging with the local communities, which was really good. And then something that surprised me was, so I spent 2 seasons living and working in community on Iona, and every day we said the kind of the morning office or morning prayer from the worship book. So very used to saying those words in the Abbey, but on the pilgrimage, we were in a very different context. So we said it on the beach in Bamborough, outside the gates of Melrose Abbey with kind of the traffic going past, and then like in the dining room of the hostel, kind of wherever we could make space to all like sit or stand together, we said it, and I found that quite powerful. So yeah, I think that's enough from me for now. So I think Elizabeth is here somewhere. Her camera isn't working, but we should be able to hear her. So hello, Elizabeth.
Yes, hello. I'm
Hello.
represented here today by this highly accurate technical representation of what I look like. I hope it's fine for you all.
Yes, that's great. So yeah, if you just want to say kind of why you joined us on the pilgrimage and then something that surprised you about it.
So for me, I'm very new to pilgrimage. I've only been on 2, and they were both this summer. I did Pilgrim Cross, which some of you might know as Student Cross, which is a cross-carrying pilgrimage from Norwich?
Nottingham.
Thank you. From Nottingham to the National Marian Shrine at Walsingham. And following from that, Jack was leading that this year, and he'll be leading it next year as well. And he took the liberty of inviting me to come with Iona Young Adults Group to walk St. Cuthbert's Way. And for me, I'm a trans woman. I'm not out in my local church, and my local church is not particularly accepting. So for me, the practice of going on a journey with other Christians who are from quite a different tradition to me, and being in that space and in that position of temporary community has been a very useful way of exploring what it means to be Christian and trans and to have that kind of community. In terms of what surprised me, on St. Cuthbert's Way, I was really pleased to find a group of people who had a strong emphasis on environmentalism. That's not something which is quite as present in my church tradition. And I was really taken by the Iona liturgy as well, and the kind of Celtic adjacent emphasis on God showing himself through nature.
Brilliant, thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, it was really great to kind of hold that space for the week together and build that, build the group, build the community. Any other thoughts or reflections, Elizabeth?
Not particularly.
No, that's fine. And I will, say one other thing I wanted to mention was, so Elizabeth mentioned Pilgrim Cross, which is a pilgrimage that we've done together and happens every year. And linking in with the book, Janet mentions the hymn To Be a Pilgrim, and the kind of influence of that on her, and I definitely like resonate with that, and especially because on Pilgrim Cross, at the end of each day when we arrive at our destination, as we walk in, we sing that hymn together, and it's kind of the sort of ritual of ending the day, and then we set the cross down and we say our prayer. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that that hymn. So yeah, I think
that's really interesting, Jack. I'll just perhaps ask you a few things, and Elizabeth, feel free to jump in if you want to there. I didn't know about the cross pilgrimage. I knew about other kinds of pilgrimage. The lay community of St. Benedict, to which I belong, does a series of annual pilgrimages leading up to the Easter Triduum, which we keep in Wales, in Cefn in Wales. And people set off from various parts of Wales carrying the cross, a group of young adults, a group of teenagers, a group of older adults, and so on, coming together on at that place on Maundy Thursday evening. And I think there are other traditions of carrying a cross. Some people find that really helpful. I don't know, what did you think about the whole business of carrying stuff or not carrying stuff?
Yeah, so carrying a cross definitely adds a level of complexity to organizing a pilgrimage. With pilgrim crosses like the one you've just described, in that lots of groups start in different places and converge on Walsingham. Yeah, I find when I describe pilgrim cross, I say all these things about it, then at the end I'm like, oh yeah, and we carry a cross. Because it's kind of, that's just like what we do. The thing I like about it is, so 3 people carry it at once, and you rotate round. So you're only carrying it for like a minute at a time. But that means there's like a constant flow of different people you're talking to. And I quite like that kind of way of conversation. You sort of start a conversation with one person, then they come off the cross, and then you might pick it back up like half an hour later.
That's very interesting.
For me, carrying the cross has a deeply meditative quality. It connects us physically to Christ's procession on the road to Calvary, and it invites us to come into a space to meditate on that sacrifice that he performed for us.
Yeah, thanks very much, Elizabeth. Thank you. I did carry a small one with me during Holy Week when I was doing the end-to-end. But mostly what I would try to do is pick out the crosses in the landscape. And that was one of the things I comment on in the book about how common the motif still is in the British landscape. Lots of people will tell you that the story of the cross is no longer a major story in these islands, and they would be quite wrong, because it's actually very, very common to encounter the sign of the cross and the cross people, and also, of course, to encounter crosses that have been in the landscape for hundreds of years. We went via the Ruthwell cross in the Scottish borders in Dumfries, which at one point had been broken up and hidden under the floor of Ruthwell Church, and then reconstructed again later. And I also went via the Nig cross stone or cross slab at Nig Church to just after the Black Isle. You go across the Black Isle, and then you get what's called the 2-car ferry, which, by the way, in case you're going that way, does take just 2 cars. And then you walk to Nig Church, and there is a Pictish cross slab. So it's rectangular rather than cross-shaped. But it actually includes the earliest representation of the Eucharist in Christian art in Britain. So, you know, these kind of surprising things come up to you. You come across them while you're walking on that sort of route, because I didn't know. I knew about the Ruthwell cross because I've seen it before, but I didn't know about the Nig cross slab. So, yeah, there were loads of discoveries like that. And I think that's an important thing about any pilgrimage, is having your heart open, ready to find that exploration. It's very much in accordance with the first part of the rule of St. Benedict. Listen with the ear of your heart.
Okay. Would Grace like to come in and reflect on her time on St. Cuthbert's Way?
Grace is ill, so hasn't managed to join us.
Oh, okay.
So I meant to mention that earlier on, but
okay. Well, I'm sorry
yeah.
about that. I hope you're better soon, Grace.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Jack and Elizabeth. Would anyone out there, if folk are okay with it, like to ask Janet, Bob, Hannah, Elizabeth, Jack, anything about their experiences about the book, or make a wee comment about pilgrimage, you know, that a pilgrimage that they've been on? Iona and I are good at sort of, well, Iona is better at it than me. I'm sort of scanning the screens. If you put your hand up and you want to ask anything or say anything, don't be shy. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Just see if that.
It would be great if somebody wanted to give us a brief question or comment. That'd be marvelous. I know you're out there. I can hear you aspiring.
While you all come up with your own questions, I've actually got one.
Oh,
okay.
I was reading the article that Ruth Harvey, the leader of the Iona Community, wrote about visiting the young adults group on the journey to St. Cuthbert's, and in it she talks about hospitality. I've already heard a little bit about the hospitality in Jack and Elizabeth's journey, but I wondered, Janet, Bob, Hannah, what your experience of that was. I know you will cover it in other places, but just expand a little bit on what does the hospitality of part of a pilgrimage mean to you and your journeys that you've been on?
I was going to pick up actually on a kind of a footnote to what my mum said about our sort of family connections with the West Country. Because I, of course, do not know the West Country contingent anywhere near so well. Yeah, I'm a couple of generations removed from this now. And I remember just being so overwhelmed by how welcoming they were when I was down there. You know, I was only about a week in or something when we first met them, maybe only 3-4 days, maybe even less. And, you know, I'd only just started. And that's the bit where it's difficult, right? You know, you're 18 years old and it's the first time you've ever undertaken a huge 2-month independent project like this. So just to have people that you kind of barely know make so much loving, hospitable fuss over you, it was just absolutely overwhelming. I still remember that really well now. And it absolutely, you know, kicked off a friendship in our generation as well that lasted. So that was really lovely.
It was, Hannah, you're right. And of course, actually, what Jack and Elizabeth were describing was very like what you did, Bob, when you did your first end-to-end in 2003.
In part, yes, I had a mixed accommodation. Quite a lot of the way I was carrying me stuff and just doing it kind of unsupported, as it were, and staying in people's houses and things that were contacted through various church channels. And yeah, once again, it was just couldn't have happened without that amount of hospitality.
And you were meeting groups from churches and asking them about their responses to your questions about the
change,
economy and change and so forth, weren't you? No, we're talking 2 decades ago now, Bob. Yeah. But that stayed with you quite a lot, I think. Yeah,
there's a little reportlet about it, and it also has gone to my head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and influenced what you carried on doing after that. That's right. Of course, to go back to the rule of St. Benedict, we better not forget it. Benedict says, treat everyone as Christ. Welcome everyone as if they're Christ. That's one of the key things about the rule, that you should be open and hospitably welcoming people like that. And certainly, you know, I totally agree with what people said. It's the way in which, you know, people love to welcome you. That is a great thing. And also, of course, we found a lot of churches that had been repurposed. You know, what I was saying about the story of the cross not having gone away. When people repurpose churches, they often become holy places of another kind. And I had some good cake in some, and I think I had some soup in another. And the other thing that happened was the Eco Cafe. Now, Bob thought I was never going to leave this place. This was on the Great Glenway up towards Inverness, and there was this little clearing in the woodland, and it said Eco Cafe, and there's a big hand painted sign, and you had to go into it. So I went into it, and there were some very friendly chickens there too, and the people that ran the Eco Cafe were just some people who sort of owned this house and had a big garden and that, and they just let people sit there and kept feeding them cake and cold drinks and peaches and all kind of business. And I sat there for quite a long time, and as I say, Bob did wonder at one point whether I was ever going to leave it, didn't you?
I didn't. Then I found you there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave either.
That's right. So hospitality, top marks for that.
Anyone else like to chip in or ask anything or make a wee comment? Well, I'd like to ask about resources for pilgrimage. Obviously, Janet's book is a resource for a pilgrimage, but other resources for pilgrimage. I think Jane at Wild Goose put a bunch of different Wild Goose publications up on Instagram. They were good suggestions, but what would folks say? You know, Janet, you talked about walking with music, not walking with music, walking with apps, not walking with apps. On a pilgrimage, I would say a resource for a pilgrimage would be if I was walking, I would have to listen to music.
Okay.
A lot of the time. I can't live without it.
Okay.
It's just totally part of my soul and being. So I was thinking that a good resource music wise for me would be Joni Mitchell's Hijira album. That would be one of my major resources for pilgrimage.
I make songs up when I'm walking along.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I think other people,
Well, that's better.
Some like the sound, some don't. What I'd say, the best resource for pilgrimage is other pilgrims. So if you're thinking of starting one or any kind of journey of this sort, talk to other people who have been doing it or are going to do it or have thought about it or have done some or whatever. And just pick up conversations with people about the whole business. Firstly, because you can get lots of guidebooks, that's true, but guidebooks don't always fit with the person. A lot of guidebooks have things in them like stage 1, 25 miles. And then you think, oh, for goodness sake, stage 2, 17 3/4 miles, you know, and so it goes on. And you may not be a 17 3/4 stage 2 person. So one of the things someone said to me about mine recently was that what she liked was that I broke it down into small doable steps. Okay, so before you start, that's the thing, speak to other people, hear what they have to say, and then you'll pick up things like, am I going to want to have music? Will I want to eat cheese butties every day for a fortnight? Bob wants to say something.
Yeah, get some idea of the scope of what a pilgrimage can be, and at some point perhaps even don't get too worried about having to call it a pilgrimage. Call it whatever you want to call it and do it the way you want to do it. Yeah,
because you know what you're trying to do is open yourself to the experience, and the experience of meeting other people, being in the landscape, getting to these places, whatever it is. So that's the most important thing, not whether you do it like it was in a book or you always do it the same or whatever. What Hannah said about the West Country, because people do sometimes ask about the end-to-end, about where you start. We always start at Land's End on the 3 we've done, but you can start from John O'Groats if you like walking downhill. But it meant that the first bit is in that really long peninsula in Cornwall. And the thing about that is it's much longer than you think. It takes 300 miles to get to Gloucester, right? That is a long way. But once you get to Gloucester, you're pretty well set on your way. You know, you're going there. But within the first sort of week, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 days, that's the tough bit, because you've got to get up every morning and start again. So that's when you kind of work out what's the best way for you and those you're with of doing it. And that's the one thing about doing it in a group that could be, you know, quite a challenge, because not everybody might come to the same conclusions, might they? But I would say fuel your pilgrimage. Don't forget that. I'd only gone a very short distance when a colleague of mine from school said to his wife, I don't think Janet's going to make it. She's only been doing it a few days, he says, and she's only got this far. But all she's done so far is eat fish and chips and ice cream. And that was true.
Did worry me.
Yeah, it worried him as well. Yeah.
I suppose one of the things about pilgrimage, and I'm not sure this is on topic or not, but
yeah,
but your needs have become very basic. You know, when you're living in your house and everything, your needs are actually still basic, but you don't really reflect on that fact. But when you're out on the pilgrimage, it's about breathing sometimes, about food, energy, how your legs are, your feet, all that kind of thing. It's all very basic. And some things come to life that didn't before. You know, there's a hymn, "My faith is an oaken staff." And it's just like a metaphor, isn't it? But the metaphor comes to life when you actually need a stick to hold you up as you're walking along.
Yes, he's made a good point there. Okay. So just go.
I was also going to very briefly jump in and absolutely agree with what one Bob Walker recently said about how it doesn't have to look like anyone else's pilgrimage to still be, you know, you don't necessarily have to use the word pilgrimage, and it doesn't have to look like anything. So the thing that I did 4 years after doing the end-to-end was I did a totally chaotic solo random stage walk from university to my first job, which honestly has stayed with me every bit as much as doing 2 months and 1,000 miles up the length of the country. I think if only because it was the first one I did totally unsupported, which I think, you know, it makes a huge difference. And you know, it was totally mad. I just kind of, you know, took a rucksack and a map with me each day and thought, well, I hope there's a train station about 20 miles away. I'm all for anything being a pilgrimage that speaks to you in the way that a pilgrimage ought to. That is my point.
Yes, and I think you made it well. And I was always in awe of you doing that particular trip from, as you say, where you were at uni to your first job. Not everyone would think of doing that, but it was an important transition, wasn't it? And, you know, these kind of walks can help you with that.
Can I just suggest that you don't take a job in Wick anytime soon?
Not unless you live quite close to Wick, anyway. Okay, well, I mean, look, we've been going on forever. It's now 8 o'clock, Neil.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We could talk for ages yet, as you can imagine, which is not a good thing. All those people want to go home.
Yeah, sure. I'll just ask Jack and Elizabeth if they want to say anything else or add anything. Maybe they don't.
On the matter of resources, I just want to echo what I believe it was Janet said, that fellow pilgrims can be a really useful resource, particularly doing pilgrimage in a group. We've, both on Pilgrim Cross and on St. Cuthbert's Way, we've had people who would not be able to do that kind of pilgrimage on their own, don't have the physical capability for whatever reason, but because we've got support drivers and people thinking about where we're going to stay and things, it's been possible for them to be part of our pilgrimage, and that's been very healthy for those two groups.
Very good point, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Yes.
I think we were gonna end with a blessing, Janet, but I think I'll end with a prayer and then you can maybe end with the blessing. Is that okay?
I'll find something.
Oh, okay.
Carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to thank everyone who took part. That was great. Thanks. And thanks to Iona again. And thanks to everyone out there. And thanks to everyone who supports Wild Goose. If you want to help Wild Goose buy a book, it's www.ionabooks.com. And don't forget the possibility of winning a free book too. I think that's it. I think while Janet finds a blessing, I'll read this. Okay, good. I'll read this prayer poem by Kate McElhaga. Kate McElhaga is no longer with us, but she was an amazing writer and person. I only got to meet her a couple times when I was on Iona.
She was a mentor to Bob and me when we were first writing prayers. She
was to me too. The first time I came to Iona, I couldn't get in the door because the wind was, weird. It was holding. I thought God or whatever didn't want me in the church, which I could believe. And then I got into the church and I sat down and somebody read something by Kate McElhaga, and it was so beautiful and so connected to nature, and not really very, for me at the time, sort of Jesus-y and gaudy, and I could really connect with it. And I thanked her for that when I saw her one time, but she left the world too early, but she sure left the world with some good things. So thanks, Spirit of Kate. Address to a pilgrim. Rome to Canterbury, Derry to Iona, Iona to Bramborough, Bramborough to Bradwell, Whitby to Whithorn. Pilgrimage is a circular route, following the scuff marks of history. Beware the onslaught of nostalgia. Look out for sickly sentimentality, the saintly monk who never broke a fingernail or into a sweat. Remember, rather, the walk in the footsteps of countless refugees, tramping the forests of fear, camping out in the fields of hopelessness. The scent not of crushed myrtle, but panic. The sound not of the lark, but of the sniper's bullet, soaring, seeking warm flesh. Seek then to remember the brave steps of Mandela, the unfinished work of Luther King, the courage and compassion of Romero. Carry with you also her story, Margaret of Scotland and Hilda of Whitby, Clothde and Bertha, persuasive princesses, Elizabeth Fry and Emily Pankhurst, who broke open prisons and set free prisoners. Remember all the invisible ones. Walk in the footmarks of the forgotten ones. And when your place of departure becomes also your place of arrival, and you know the place for the first time, what has changed? What have you indulged? In seeking, have you been found? In penance, have you traveled the long road, the long, hard road to restitution? And as you step off and out of the procession, what of you will those who continue carry until you meet again? What of them do you bring to us? Sorry, I didn't read that so well. My eyes are getting really bad. Which is great for an editor, isn't it?
Too much work.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to finish with what I call the end-to-end anniversary declaration, because it is 5 years since I walked the end-to-end. At the moment, we're doing what we call the end-to-end resplodge, which is remembering where we were 5 years ago. And actually, we were in the Great Glen, on the Great Glen Way, and it was a bit splodgy. So we kind of go over it like that to remember. When Bob first did his end-to-end in 2003, it fueled so much of the rest of our ministry, you know, kind of reconnecting with it and so on. And it still does, with Hannah having done it and so on. So I have this thing called the end-to-end anniversary declaration, which, you know, is the kind of thing you can say on those moments. It goes like this. I inhabit a space made by the Creator, lived in by the Son, and animated by the Spirit. In that space, around me and within me, I commit myself anew to the community of the good traveller, staying local where I can, treading gently on the earth, making each step count, ready to salute the species around me and celebrate our place in the universe.
Thank you. Well, that's certainly a good place to end. Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hope to see you all again sometime.